What if we told you that the roots of heavy metal run far deeper than the names you already know? Before the genre exploded in the 80s, before stadium tours, glam, and thrash, there were bands quietly shaping the sound in clubs, basements, and forgotten corners of the world. They weren't chasing trends, they were building something heavier. Some had cult followings, some opened for legends, and some vanished before anyone realized how ahead of their time they truly were. These are 10 obscure metal bands from the 1970s that every true fan needs to hear. Number 1, Budgie. Long before thrash had a name, there was Budgie, a Welsh trio that delivered riffs heavy enough to crack concrete and weird enough to make them unforgettable. Formed in the late 60s and peaking through the early and mid-70s, Budgie were pioneers, not just of heavy metal, but of the strange groovy undercurrents that still ripple through the genre today. Their albums didn't chart high, but among those who heard them, they hit hard. Their third album, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, became a cult favorite thanks to Bread Fan, a track later revived by Metallica. Earlier albums like Squawk and In for the Kill delivered underground classics such as Hot as a Docker's Armpit, Zoom Club, and In for the Kill. Each record was packed with left-field song structures, thunderous bass lines, and guitar tones that felt years ahead of their time. They may not have had the mainstream spotlight, but their influence is all over the map. Budgie weren't trying to be part of a movement. They were just doing what felt right, and somehow they helped define one. Number 2, Riot. They had the riffs, the urgency, and the songs, but never the momentum they deserved. Formed in New York City in 1975, Riot straddled the line between hard rock grit and early U.S. heavy metal. Their 1977 debut, Rock City, introduced their punchy, riff-driven sound but it was Narita and Fire Down Under that truly defined their legacy. Even though the latter technically dropped in the next decade, its roots were pure 70s energy. Songs like Warrior, Road Racin', and Outlaw combined fast tempos, twin guitar leads, and soaring vocals that would go on to influence the speed and power metal movements. Riot played loud, played fast, and never apologized for it. Despite critical praise and a loyal following, label setbacks and constant lineup changes kept them just out of the spotlight. But among collectors and die-hard fans, their 70s output remains a blueprint for American metal done right. Number 3, Cirith Ungol. No one sounded quite like them, and that may have been the problem. Formed in Ventura, California in the early 70s, Cirith Ungol operated in a world of their own. While the rest of the rock world was leaning into glam or blues-based hard rock, they were building a dark, fantastical vision drawn from sword and sorcery novels and doom-laced riffage. Their debut album, Frost and Fire, didn't arrive until 1981, but the material dated back years, shaped during the late 70s when the band was already performing tracks like A Little Fire, Edge of a Knife, and the title track, Live. Guitars were raw and jagged, drums thundered like collapsing towers, and vocals shrieked somewhere between a war cry and a warning. They didn't follow the trends of the era. They sounded ancient even when they were new. I'm feeling burning, and I feel the breeze. while they were ignored at the time, their influence would echo across doom, epic metal, and underground circles for decades to come. Number 4. Captain Beyond. Before metal found its footing, some bands were already tearing up the rulebook, and Captain Beyond was one of them. Formed in 1971 by former members of Deep Purple, Iron Butterfly, and Johnny Winter's band, Captain Beyond were light years ahead of what most rock bands were doing at the time. Their self-titled debut, released in 1972, was a kaleidoscope of heavy riffs, odd time signatures, and spacey transitions, all delivered with a metallic edge that would later be called proto-metal. Tracks like Dancing Madly Backwards, Mesmerization Eclipse, and Raging River of Fear twisted between groove-heavy riffs and cosmic breakdowns. Their follow-up, Sufficiently Breathless, leaned more into jazz fusion, but still carried the weight of their earlier work. They never broke into the mainstream, partly because they didn't fit neatly into a genre. But for listeners willing to dig deeper, Captain Beyond became one of the most rewarding buried treasures of 70s heavy music. Number 5. Y&T. They were heavier than most hard rock bands, but never quite metal enough for the purists, and that made them easy to overlook. Formed in Oakland, California in 1974, Y&T, originally known as Yesterday and Today, spent the second half of the decade building a reputation as one of the loudest, tightest live bands on the West Coast. Their self-titled debut dropped in 1976, followed by Struck Down in 1978. Both albums mixed bluesy guitar work with high-octane riffs and gritty, passionate vocals. Songs like Alcohol, 25 Hours a Day, and Struck Down showcased the power and precision that would later become more polished in their 1980s work. But back then, it was all raw energy and sweat-soaked stages. While later albums got slicker, their 70s material still hits with a punch, capturing a band right on the edge of becoming something bigger, heavier, and ready to break out. That's 5 bands down, and we're just getting started. Which of these brought back a memory, or maybe surprised you? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's see which forgotten names still hit the hardest. Number 6, Sir Lord Baltimore.
Turn, turn, wheel of fortune spin.
Before most bands even figured out what heavy metal could be, these guys were already playing it at full volume.
Like a wild child.
Formed in Brooklyn in the late 60s, they released their debut, Kingdom Come, in 1970. A record so loud and aggressive that critics at the time didn't even have the language for it. It's one of the earliest albums ever described with the term heavy metal, and for good reason. The title track, Kingdom Come, along with Hellhound and Lady of Fire, fused fuzzed-out guitar tones, galloping drums, and shouted vocals that felt closer to punk or thrash than anything else happening in 1970. Their follow-up, self-titled, pulled back slightly, but the edge never disappeared. They vanished almost as fast as they appeared, but left behind a sound that would echo through metal's evolution for decades. Sir Lord Baltimore wasn't just ahead of the curve, they were somewhere else entirely. Number 7, Quartz. Not every band in the Sabbath orbit got the spotlight, but a few got close. Hailing from Birmingham and originally known as Bandy Legs, Quartz emerged in the mid-70s right alongside the founding fathers of metal. Their self-titled debut, produced by Tony Iommi, landed in 1977 and blended classic British heaviness with melodic flashes that hinted at what the NWO BHM wave would soon deliver. Tracks like Satan's Serenade, Mainline Riders, and Street Fighting Lady were full of sharp riffs, driving rhythms, and a darkness that wasn't overblown, just baked in. Their follow-up, Stand Up and Fight, 1980, leaned even further into that emerging metal sound, but the roots were pure 70s. Quartz never broke out internationally, but in the UK, they became one of those bands everyone knew about, even if few truly listened. Looking back, they were closer to the core of British metal's evolution than most people realize. Number 8, Lucifer's Friend. You wouldn't expect one of the earliest proto-metal blueprints to come from Germany, and especially not from the same guy who later fronted Uriah Heep. Formed in Hamburg in the early 70s, Lucifer's Friend released their self-titled debut in 1970. It was dark, heavy, and surprisingly progressive, often mentioned in the same breath as Sabbath, Deep Purple, or Atomic Rooster. But where those bands found lasting fame, Lucifer's Friend remained buried deep in vinyl crates and collector circles. Their first album featured standout cuts like Ride in the Sky, Lucifer's Friend, and Keep Going, a mix of blaring horns, doomy riffs, and unpredictable arrangements. Later albums like Where the Groupies Killed the Blues and Banquet explored jazz and psych territory, but that debut, pure early metal fire. Lucifer's Friend didn't stick to one sound, and that's probably why they never stuck with one audience. But that first record still holds up as one of the most adventurous and heavy albums of its time. Number 9, Trapeze. Before Glenn Hughes joined Deep Purple, he was fronting one of the UK's most underrated heavy rock powerhouses. Trapeze formed in 1969 and gradually shifted from psychedelic roots into a leaner, heavier sound. By the time they released You Are the Music, We're Just the Band, in 1972, they'd found their identity. A fiery mix of funk-infused grooves, bluesy vocals, and hard-hitting guitar lines that flirted with proto-metal without losing their soulful edge. Songs like Keep in Time, Way Back to the Bone, and Coast to Coast showcased their ability to shift from swaggering riffs to smooth melodic breakdowns without missing a beat. The chemistry between Hughes, guitarist Mel Galley, and drummer Dave Holland was undeniable, and years later, all three would go on to play with some of the biggest names in rock and metal. Trapeze may not have been full-blown metal, but they laid the groundwork for what heavy rock could sound like when it wasn't afraid to swing. Number 10, Buffalo. While the rest of the world looked to the UK or the US for heavy music, Australia was quietly producing one of the rawest, loudest bands of the decade. Formed in Sydney in 1971, Buffalo were one of the first Aussie acts to fully embrace the heaviness of early metal. Their second album, Volcanic Rock, is now considered a cornerstone of underground heavy rock, packed with filthy guitar tones, loose song structures, and lyrics that pulled no punches. Tracks like Sunrise, Come My Way, Freedom, and Shylock mixed heavy blues with a thundering groove that made even their sludgiest moments feel alive. Later albums like Only Want You for Your Body pushed things further, with harder riffs and a reputation for confronting taboo subjects. Buffalo never got the international exposure they deserved, but in the Southern Hemisphere, they helped shape a scene. Their sound was unpolished, loud, and defiant, and that's exactly why it still holds up.